Hey everyone, Shane here from freetectorials.com. I'm here today with your 16th Java tutorial. In this tutorial today, we're going to be continuing our discussion on nested loops. So in our example today, what we're doing is we have, I've created two arrays here. One I've named months, which just has the first couple months of a year, and the next one I've named days, which is an integer array that has the number of days in each of those months. So what we're going to do is we're going to print out each month followed by all of the days that are in that month. And we're going to use nested for loops for that. So let's go ahead and create our initial for loop here to print out the months. So do for and I equals, and we'll start with 0. Remember, we start with 0 with arrays because their indexes start at 0. And we're going to do the whole array, so we can just use kind of the thing we learned before, which is, well, I is less than the name of the array, so we'll do months dot length. And then we can do our incrementer, I++. Open up that for loop there. And so every time this runs, what we want it to do is we want it to print out the month that it's on. So print line. And then we know we can use the counter there to print out the index of our array. So when that starts at 0, it'll print out January. When it goes to 1, it'll print out February, and so on, as we've seen before. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to print out the days in that month. And so we're going to use a nested for loop for that. So we'll go and create another for loop here. And we know that we need a different counter variable. Since we've already used I in the outer for loop, we're going to use j here in the inner one. And since we're actually going to print out all of the days in the month and not just the number of days, we're going to start at 1, because obviously a month doesn't have a 0 day. And then we're going to say, we're going to have that run while our counter is less than or equal to the number of days in that month. So we have our days array. How do we get the number of days for, let's say, the first one would be January? Well, we know that January's days is the first item in our days array. So what we can do is we can write the days array, and we can actually use the counter from our outer loop. And so what's that saying here is that whatever this item in our array is, so let's say that we're going on the first loop, so we know the loop starts, the counter starts at 0. When it gets down here, it's going to say run this next loop while j is less than or equal to days 0. And we know that days 0 is 31, so this loop should actually run 31 times, and that's exactly what we want, because we want to print out every day that's in that month. So we'll go ahead and do our incrementer here for this loop, open, close. And we just want to print out those numbers one by one as they come. So the system.out print line, or actually we'll do print because we want it all on the same line. And we're going to do the value of j, because again, j is going to keep incrementing every time until it gets to, in this example, would be for the first loop, it'd be 31. So j is going to keep increasing, and we're just going to print out j every time. Now, if we weren't to put anything else after that, the numbers would be all scrunched up together. So let's go ahead and concatenate just a blank space on there. Alright, looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and run this and let's see what we get so we can talk about it. Alright, so it looks like we're almost there, but we still got something else going on. So the first time I ran through this, it printed out January like we were expecting. Then it went to this inner loop, and so it said, okay, print out while the counter is less than or equal to the number of days at the 0 index, which 31, which we put in, and it did that for us. Now the only thing is here, it went back up to the top, and then it just went, the incrementer for I went to 1, so that would be February is at the 1 index, and it printed that out. However, it printed it on the same line. Now the reason for that is because we right here, we just told all of the numbers for that month to print out on the same line, which is what we wanted and what we got here. But there's nothing telling it to skip down to the next line before it gets back to this point. So what we can do is after this inner for loop, and before it goes back up to our outer loop, we can just print out, basically telling it to go to the next line. To do that, we just do system.out.println with nothing in the parentheses there. So what this says, when you leave it blank, it just basically tells Java, go to the next line. Don't put anything on that line, but just go there and wait. So let's go ahead and run this again, and let's see if it fixes our formatting here. Alright, there we go. It looks much better. So we can see now we've got the month. We've got all of the days of that month listed out. Goes to the next month and does it again. So just to reiterate here, what's happening here is it starts out with this for loop. It starts at the 0, and the 0 index here is what's printing out. So it says while I, which is 0, is less than the length of this array, which it is because this length of this array is actually 4 items, go ahead and print out whatever's at that index. So when it goes to the first time, it's obviously 0, so it prints off January. Then it goes through and it runs everything inside this opening and closing brace here, which includes this for loop. Once it gets down here, it says, okay, we're going to start j at 1, and now while j is less than or equal to days I, which for the first one is 0, which is 31, do this, and basically print out the value of j with the space. So this runs 31 times. After that's done, it comes down here to the next line. It says, okay, go ahead and move to the next line. After that, it goes back up to our outer for loop. It evaluates again, which I is now incremented, so now I is 1. Is 1 less than the month's length? Yes, because we know the length is 4. So it prints out the next one. It prints out month's 1, which would be February, which we can see here. Comes down here. J starts at 1 again, because this is now reset. And it prints out all the days until it equals this right here, which is 28, and we can see that it printed out 28 there. And so it keeps going through this format over and over again. So you got outer loop runs, inner loop runs and runs and runs, does this thing till it's done, goes back, and the outer loop runs again, and it repeats that process over and over again. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope this makes sense between this example and the last example. I think hopefully it illustrates really well how the inner loops and outer loops run and how they can be used together. Really powerful. You'll find quite a few instances where this will come in really handy in the future. So if you liked the tutorial, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.